Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, December 29th. Almost Happy New Year. Before we do say that, though, it is time to wrap up a roller coaster 2024 in politics. A presidential race that flipped the White House from blue to red. Massachusetts now facing the Trump title shift. The roundtable is here to sort through all the political beach glass. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
And welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harney.
And I'm Charmin Sacchetti. We are joined, as you can see, by Democratic political analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican political analyst Rob Gray to talk about the big political stories that define 2024. Where do we start?
Anywhere.
All right, we'll start here. It seems like there is only one place to start, logically, and that's with Donald Trump. He won all of the swing states back in November. He won the popular vote. The margins were fairly tight, but red washed over blue almost everywhere that it counted. He says he has a mandate to turn Washington upside down. Marianne, does he?
You don't have a mandate when you only win by 1.47%. That is not a mandate. When you only have a one vote margin in the House, that is not a mandate. When you have maybe 3, possibly 4 votes in the Senate to lose, that is not a mandate, which is why you saw in the wake of the election on November 5th, quickly Trump and everyone coming out before the votes were counted, claiming they had a mandate to try to get their nominees through. And now you know why. Not one of them is qualified.
Rob, is it a mandate or you in the Marianne corner?
Well, remember the Austin Powers movies, Mini-Me?
Yeah.
It's a mini mandate for Trump. I mean, Trump and a lot of Republicans went out and said it's a red wave. And Marianne is right. It was not a red wave. Now, Trump, 312 electoral votes, nothing to sneeze at. Won the popular vote, nothing to sneeze at. But it narrowed, the House narrowed, the Republican majority in the House is so small that it's going to be a problem for the next 2 years for Republicans.
And will Senate Republicans push back on the controversial cabinet choices, or will the fear of being primaried keep most in line, Marianne?
Well, we haven't even had one FBI background check done yet, let alone made it public. We haven't had one Senate confirmation hearing, let alone anything else. Those two things will ultimately determine whether any of Trump's nominees go through. And when you look at the 3 or 4 vote margin we've talked about, some of them are up for re-election, some of them aren't, and one of them might not even run. So he's got a tough hill to climb.
I mean, I feel like another one, maybe 2, could go down. But a lot of the bad ones, if you think Trump's made a lot of bad picks, and he certainly has, they will get through because Trump's playing a numbers game. Republicans are only going to stop so many of these picks. It's who the president wants on his team. Republicans are going to be inclined to look the other way and go along with some of these picks because, you know, a lot of them have Swiss cheese resumes and qualifications.
Swiss cheese.
But there's so many that they can't stop them all. Trump would really go after them at that point.
I would just add one thing. If you're up for re-election in 2026 and you support any of these nominees, you own them. So what's worse, Trump threatening to primary you or owning the disaster that could be any one of them?
All right. The president-elect has promised mass deportations, even using the military to assist. What should we expect to see? And do you think there'll be any potential blowback on the president-elect when it comes to the optics of these kinds of arrests, Marianne? Well,
the mere fact that Tom Homans has put a marker here in Boston against Michelle Wu and is threatened publicly in every interview to use the military, use other forces to do these things. The difference here in Boston and Massachusetts, the law says you can't cooperate. You can't use law enforcement. You can't use any of these resources. So it will be chaos. They want it to be chaos. There will be raids in homes, in schools, in businesses, and that to get the coverage of it because they want people to be afraid, not just immigrants, but beyond that.
Do you think we'll see blowback at all, given those optics?
I do. I mean, remember when the Muslim ban was done and everybody here went out to Logan Airport and across the country and protested it? I think when you see that kind of bullying, physical threats, dragging kids out of schools and all that, separating parents, having Trump in home and say, you don't want to be separated, all of you go, I think people will rise up against that.
What do you think, Rob? Do you think that's overblown at all? Or do you think that, you know, what is this going to look like? And do you think he'll face any blowback?
It's going to be a lot more measured than people think. They're going to go after the criminal illegals first. And let's face it, the voters want that. I mean, if you look at swing voters who moved to Trump in the exit polls, one of their top two issues was the Biden administration and Kamala Harris's failure on illegal immigration. This is what the voters want. It may be controversial in Boston or Somerville, in sanctuary cities. It is not controversial nationwide.
Let's talk about Joe Biden. He exits the White House in just a few weeks now. His disastrous performance in the June debate with Donald Trump drove him from the ticket. And now his legacy is in tatters, and the Democratic Party is looking for a major reboot. This was an epic fail. So, Rob, let me start with you. What happens now?
Well, listen, the reboot, I mean, it has to be really a reinvention of the Democratic Party. For the first time since 1960, Democrats fared better with the top third, with the 1/3 top richest Americans than the 1/3 of the population of poorest Americans. That is a sea change for Democrats. They have real problems down the line here, and they're going to have to address it.
Marianne, what do you think?
I don't think an entire overhaul is necessary when you lose by the margins we have already discussed here. And you had a candidate in Kamala Harris who had 107 days to do it, who, frankly, because of her, Democrats were able to mitigate losses and all that. I think what Democrats need to do is communicate better. Donald Trump has proven he's had 10 years, a clear field to communicate to anybody and everybody all the time and really convince half the country he's right. And Democrats never mounted any kind of defense against him except during a general election. So I think that I hear Rob's demographic arguments, and they are true, but I don't think Democrats need to throw everything out and reinvent themselves completely. It's not that bad.
Well, Biden said he would be a transition president, not run for a second term. He did anyway, as we all know. He said he would not pardon his son Hunter. He did anyway. For all of the accomplishments of his administration, will history point back to those two things, Rob?
Well, I think the Hunter Biden pardon, definitely. I mean, that really hurts Biden and how he goes down in history. I think there's a different second issue that's going to be a problem for Biden, and it's the cover-up of his health decline by the president and by the White House. We saw it play out on the political stage. I mean, let's face it, for the last year, anybody who was watching, and the media was asleep at the switch too, knew that Joe Biden was basically sharp as a marble right now. And that is really going to hurt him in terms of the history books.
What do you think, Marianne?
And all of that pales in comparison to everything Donald Trump has said and done the last 10 years, including all of his legal troubles in trying to overthrow an election and a government. Joe
I
Biden,
don't know. Covering up the president's mental decline is a significant violation if you worked at the White House.
Overthrowing an election and trying to stay in office? Really? That doesn't compare. Last point here. Joe Biden said when he ran in 2020, said he would put shots in people's arms, get them back to work. He did all those things. He also said he would be a transitional figure, and that implied to everybody he would only stay for one term. He did not do that, and that was a big mistake.
Let's talk about Kamala Harris. We know the vice president didn't have much time to mount the presidential campaign. You mentioned, what, over 100 days or so?
107.
Right. She did manage to raise $1 billion in a short amount of time. It wasn't enough money, obviously. Was her run doomed from the start, Marianne, or did she just not make the case or reach voters?
She did the thing that no one has ever been able to do, and I'm not sure anyone could, which is start, run, and end a presidential campaign in 107 days. And she did it better than I think anyone else could have. That said, this election, ultimately, whether it was 107 or 2,000 days, was between a qualified woman and a convicted felon, and the convicted felon's going to the White House.
Rob, what do you think?
I mean, in the final analysis, Kamala Harris may have been qualified, but she was a terrible candidate if you look at it. It was a tidal wave when she started. That first month of her campaign through her debate performance, which was excellent, really she had a lot of energy, but that wave ran out of energy in mid to late September through October, and she never recovered. She hid out. She didn't do interviews. I think when people look back, they'll say she raised all the money, but she was a bad candidate.
Yes or no? Can you see her running again in 2028?
I see her. Sure, I can see her running.
Can you see her running again in 2028?
She's already come back on stage, so yes.
We continue.
Not successfully.
We'll see.
Yeah, we just talked about running, not success. Plenty more to come. We'll talk about Beacon Hill when we come back. The challenges for Governor Healy and Mayor Wu. Stay with us.